And we're live from the Salesforce Incubator. Actually, not in the Salesforce Incubator, but we're live this week. There is a offsite in Tahoe where everybody in the incubator is, and that's why I've invited Kirk to sit in with me.
You're Sean for the week.
And so as you know, CRM Science is in the incubator. We are mentoring the companies in the incubator. They're building AppExchange apps. Most of them are related to AI and Einstein. And one of the biggest themes this week, and it's kind of an ongoing theme. There's over a dozen companies in the incubator, and most of them are new to Salesforce and don't have development orgs or partnership with Salesforce, and we're trying to get through that process with them. Kirk, you've gone through that with many companies before. We're a PDO, so tell us, what is the process of getting these orgs and the whole partnerships with Salesforce and how it kind of fits together?
Okay, so there's a lot of moving pieces through the creation of an AppExchange app. And one of the early initial things that you can do is set up all the necessary orgs. So we're talking initial development orgs, what eventually becomes a partner business org, patching orgs, packaging, testing, QA, demo orgs. There's a lot of different environments that you're going to be juggling eventually. So talking about the multiple pieces that can happen concurrently is you probably have developers chomping at the bit to get started. So it's easy enough just to go to developerforce.com and spin up some developer environments. And that way your developers are actively doing something while you're going through the partnership agreement process. You're going through and preparing all the resources necessary for the technical review questionnaire, or they call it the approval package on the Salesforce side. All the requirements on the legal as well as the questionnaire and the technical review with them to get to the point of establishing what becomes your partner business org. And that's really the
But that actually starts with you going to partnersignup.salesforce.com and just get the partnership getting started there.
Exactly.
Over there, you have to just sign up and agree to the general terms, and that kicks off the process where all the paperwork comes to you, you fill it up, and that's where you are now.
Exactly. So you've gone to the partner community. You attempt to log in. If you have an existing org that you want to use, maybe you are a Salesforce customer and you do want to use that org for your app functionality, or maybe you're brand new to the environment, to the ecosystem, and you can just use a developer force instance and register with that. Or you can log in and register, and then you'll get an email with confirmation about what your next steps are. And that really begins that process of how do I become a partner. It enters you into that queue, the conversation with Salesforce to here's your next steps to become that fully registered partner. And at that point, they'll provide to you something like a technical review questionnaire, which is just a very lengthy document with various questions about how you envision your app's going to fit into the ecosystem, what sort of technologies you use both on the Salesforce platform as well as outside the Salesforce platform, just to get an idea of the resources that your app's going to bring to Salesforce, essentially. So as that's complete, they'll hand over that partner business org. And one of the nice things about a partner business org, that becomes your central hub for all operations for the AppExchange. Within it, you'll likely use it for, it's called the environment hub. So as you need these additional resources, you have one central org in which you can request additional from their app. You can create new developer orgs where you're going to create your official packaging org. And the nice thing about it is, because you're probably already developing in these other environments, before you even have this partner business org, it gives you the option to reconnect those to your new hub, essentially. Take these development orgs your developers have been working in for a few weeks now and make it part of your official centralized hub.
Right. And to do that, you actually have to create a case from your partner org with the business org ID, so they can install the environment hub in it.
And there's one important distinction that I make there. Environment hub, you might have it, if you have an existing Salesforce org, you might have an environment hub in there that allows you to do the same sort of environment creation. But there's a partner equivalent of it that gives you additional options. So as you're requesting these new environments to develop on it or test or demo, you have additional options to say, I would like to generate this type of org with this sort of license structure or these features enabled. And typically the nice benefit of that is longer expiration periods, if at all. as well as the feature set that's enabled for it and the governor link. So maybe you have a need for, maybe you have a sync app that you want to do some stress testing and you want to load an a ton of data into. Normal environment hub that's going to generate the environments for it is going to have a very, very minuscule amount of data that you can, typically less than a sandbox, we'll say.
Right.
So doing the partner equivalent is going to give you that access to do a full sync of what your max, your largest customer's data set's going to look like.
Right, and actually, you can create the partner development orgs that will become your packaging org, which, like you said, have higher limits and allows you to put more data in, and it's a little bit more stable environment as opposed to a regular development org that maybe at some point will be erased.
Yeah, exactly. Treating one as more of a permanent solution. So you wanted to have all the features that you're going to expect to use and all the higher limits, as opposed to, I want to call it a toss away or throwaway org, but essentially that's what it could become. You could go down a path and say, you know what, I'd like to take a different approach to this app. Let me set this org aside. I don't need it any further. Maybe I need to pull some elements out of it. Let me generate another one with higher limits, and let me try again.
Right. So the interesting thing is through the incubator, the companies are able to create their sales org with Salesforce Start. Salesforce for Startups have the ability to create a sales org or a business org for the incubators and actually other companies as well. And then the idea is that from there we sign up to the partner community using the business org credentials, install the environment hub, and create the partner developer org that is going to be used eventually for the packaging. And then what happens next?
So at that point, you're progressing towards a beta release, essentially. All of your developers, maybe they're working in individual developer environments, you have some sort of source control process to consolidate their efforts into another org. Maybe it's a pre-packaging org that you're merging all these efforts and testing everything out before getting it into that packaging org where you're saying, okay, here's the best of all the components I have. Let me bundle them together as a managed package, and let me turn that into the official pre-release beta app. And the nice thing about that is now you have all the final, quote-unquote final products that you're going to be turning into that app. You can release a beta app, which allows you to take all those components and easily install them into any other environment. So going back to that environment hub, it's not uncommon for you to have multiple test environments. Maybe for you as the developer putting it together, you'll have your own test environment, and it won't have any of those components in it yet, but you can take that installation link from the beta package, install the package in just as an end user is going to get it, as if they downloaded it and installed it from the AppExchange. Test it out, see what works, what needs revision. If something does need revision, you go back to square one, do the development, go through the source control, make all the merges happen, and now you're in packaging org again with those changes. Release your next beta, you're going from beta 1 to beta 2, you reinstall, you do your testing again in your org. If you have other stakeholders that have their own testing in QA or UAT orgs, you give them the installation link for the latest package, they install it, test it out, give you feedback. At this time, it's even possible you have early beta customers that you want to start demonstrating. So there's some restrictions around where packages can be installed. And one important thing to know about beta packages is if you do have those beta clients, they're not going to be able to install this in their production orgs. However, if they want to provision a sandbox and allow you to install that package into their sandbox, there's no problems there. That way you're giving your potential beta clients an initial look at the product and not just receiving feedback from your stakeholders, but as well as your clients that are going to be using it as well.
Right, and testing, creating multiple testing orgs is super important because you create the testing orgs that replicate potential situation where you're going to see in real, out there in the wild, right? Mm-hmm. Different type of licenses, different features enabled or disabled, and you can test with all those to make sure that your package is working for all these, don't fail in certain situations and so forth. So let's talk about another topic that kind of came about this week and before. There's the new partnership program with Salesforce,
Okay.
the connected apps. Tell us about that, and tell us about there's a connected app, and there's also a connected app program. So
Okay.
it's a little confusing to some people.
So I'll talk about the connected app, and maybe you can fill in the blanks around what the connected app program is.
Okay, sounds good.
So a lot of the developers, or a lot of the teams within the incubator that I've talked to so far, are doing a lot of their initial steps to do some development within Salesforce and bridge their existing services, those services that are outside of Salesforce. And they need some sort of gateway to authenticate into their customer Salesforce orgs securely. Using credentials, not recommended. However, you can use a connected app, set something up within your development environment, include it in your package, call it a connected app, and that's going to include something like an API key and secret that these development teams are going to use to provide it authenticated via OAuth webflow or user flow into your Salesforce customers' orgs, authenticated as that user. So now your services outside of Salesforce can communicate with the standard Salesforce APIs or any sort of custom Apex classes, Apex REST classes that you've implemented, and basically open up that gateway from those external services into the customer Salesforce org. So there's one component that you're including in the package, but it's usable across all the Salesforce customers, providing that authentication mechanism into their environments. So it's a
Right.
critical piece that you see more often than not in integration apps that have some sort of aspect of coming in. They're also used if you are exposing any of your services, the stuff that's hosted outside of Salesforce, and you want to expose it via a tab in Salesforce through what's called a Canvas app, basically the glorified iframe within Salesforce.
Mhm.
I want to securely expose your service information within a Salesforce tab to keep all your Salesforce users within the Salesforce environment. There's not multiple windows, there's not multiple browser tabs, it's within the environment they're already operating.
Single sign-on.
Single sign-on can be applied to it as well. There's additional logic that if you wanted to provide a communication of your Salesforce data, maybe you're working on a contact record and your service could benefit from the contact record's information, first name, last name, phone, email, any data point, you can create a payload that gets sent through that Canvas app.
Mhm.
So the Canvas app is really built on that connected app to provide that authenticated gateway into Salesforce. I keep saying the same terminology, but that's exactly what it
Yeah.
is. You're giving the keys to those developers to allow your customers to authenticate to Salesforce.
Right. And there's a connected app component inside Salesforce as well, which also is another, you use the same term several times.
Mhm.
But the fact that it's a connected app doesn't mean that it's a simple app. And that, I think, is a misconception.
Yeah, absolutely. If you try to label the types of apps that are out there, if you're talking integration or native, it's kind of a misnomer to call an app a connected app. A connected app, if you're treating it as a component that could be part of a larger package, it's really just that little component that's providing a service or a utility for the rest of your solution.
Right.
So the entire thing called a connected app is probably not so correct. However, it could be a very basic app that is a Canvas app and just displaying your service in a tab.
Right. And in order to be part of the connected app program that Salesforce provide, there are some limitations. I believe that it has to be a free app. I believe that there's limitations to how many Visualforce pages there are. I think it's 5,
That's right.
and some other ones. And really, the idea is that because it's a free app, there's no rev share with Salesforce. However, there is an alternative, which is a pay per org.
Okay.
So there's a package. The first package is up to 100 orgs, and it's 15K. And then the next up to 500 is 37K. Those are the numbers as of today. Who knows what it's going to be in the future? But that's actually something that we've lobbied for
Right.
through a lot of our customers that kind of needed that kind of program,
Mhm.
just because not every company who has an app is a startup. Some of them are established big companies, and they basically wanted to create an application that works for both sets of clients, that cross-section between the two clients, and it benefits both Salesforce and the third party. So, I think that it's fairly reasonable pricing, and potentially something that we can we can see more apps, maybe reduces some barrier potentially for startups.
Yeah, at the end of the day, just Salesforce providing all these technologies for you to build apps on, it inherently is not free. It seems that way, but there are costs to the processing power and storage required to do all this. And before, having all these different company sizes grouped into one structure didn't really make the most sense, and that's where I feel like there was a lot of kickback, because startups aren't Fortune 500 companies, but they're still expected to operate the same way.
Yeah.
However, a startup's going to have a much reduced footprint than those Fortune 500s that are going to have thousands upon thousands of org installs of the app. So it wasn't necessarily fair to judge them or charge them in the same sense. And that's where this nice new program is going to allow a lot of scalability for these startups that just want to get something on the ecosystem. And
Right.
it can be a great offering, but having such an expensive entry point into the AppExchange is has been a deterrent to get those apps created.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, potentially it's a way for companies to kind of test the waters a little bit and graduate into a different Salesforce program, whether it's OEM, YXP Force, or whatever. But they can do that after they start seeing the benefits of being on a platform.
Yeah, that's one of the big questions as we're talking to these startups or anyone interested in getting an app on the AppExchange. They've read and have some understanding of what they're going to get out of it, but they don't necessarily what that adoption rate is going to be from their existing customers, or what that sudden influx for new customers that find them on the AppExchange is going to be. So to have that big of a commitment without knowing that, at least in this new program, you have a way to ramp up and really get a good feel for setting up analytics and doing that discovery, what's new versus what's existing, and how valuable is it to you as a company.
Right. Yeah, so since we started with the Incubator, we actually we're kind of using it as a way for us to get ideas to write blog posts and video blogs. So we've put a lot of stuff out there on our blog related to Einstein, related to AI in general, related to the AppExchange and the AppExchange process. We just posted one a few days ago about Chimera, how to run it. That's the what you run on your server if you have if you have your own server outside of Salesforce. What's in the pipeline for us to show to the world?
So what we'd really like to put out there is some sort of strategy or checklist of, if you're interested in getting an AppExchange on the AppExchange, getting an app on the AppExchange, what are those key steps, and making sure that there's material on our website that kind of talk about what's involved at each level. So what we discussed today, becoming a partner and establishing what all the various Salesforce environments are supposed to be. What are your evaluation criteria for, is it a viable app, or is it something you should consider or not? You as a developer, if you're new to the Salesforce ecosystem, how do you create these components? How do you set up your development environments and turn it into a package? I think that's where a lot of the Incubee residents are going to run into. You've done that development, but what's next? So I'd love to put a piece together next week for turning it, either testing the waters with an unmanaged package and just getting a feel for it, and getting into some of the nuance of a managed package. What are protected elements, and what can the customer see, and what are the restrictions around working with a managed package? What can be removed, what can't be removed, what's visible, what's not visible. There's a lot of nuance to it.
Right, and some advantages of what the client can see, the customer can see, the end user, versus some of the protected features as well.
Right.
So, anything else we have for today?
Outside of that, no, but I think we're always happy to entertain if there's content that you're looking for or want more information about that we haven't discussed yet, but you think is going to be relevant. Let us know. Get to us on social, and I'm happy to put it together. I love writing about this stuff, and I need ideas.
That sounds good. So that's it for today. Join us again next week. We're doing this every week on Friday, 11 a.m. on Pacific time. It's 2 p.m. on Eastern time. Join us again next week. We'll have a guest from the Incubator. See you.
See y'all.